Hey, so I don't try and hide that I do a bit of 3D. I do like visualizing these and putting some like nice visual aspects or entire environments to showcase how they interact with music, and that sort of interplay of how the sound can interact with the visuals. It's something I'm really interested about, and really my day to day is using stuff like this to make experiences for people to enjoy and also have an impact. But it's one area where I think synthesizers have a lot of capacity to do some really cool things. So Yamaha released the SEQTRAK, and I've had a few conversations about like how it works and how they set it up, and from that conversation they actually did send me a SEQTRAK over. So I've been playing with it. I do enjoy it, it does have its place, but really I wanted this video dedicated to how the visualizer works on here because it hasn't really been talked about on YouTube that much. So we're going to have a bit of a deep dive into the software, how it works, how we can connect our sounds and input from the SEQTRAK onto the actual model, and also have a look at some of the other ways it works, especially on mobile phones and with the AR mode. So enough talking about it, let's have a look. But before I say that, I do apologize, I have come off a bit of a chest infection, so I'm still a little bit croaky, but all in all, let's have a look at how this works. So before I begin, just understand that there's a version for Android, iOS, Mac or PC, so make sure you grab the right one and get it on your device, and you'll come to a screen like this which has everything that you need to deal with the SEQTRAK. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here that you should go check out, but first things first is we're going to make sure our device is connected. So I'm just running it through USB, but there's also, you have ways to connect it with Bluetooth as well as to your phone, so go research how that works. Same thing with audio, I'm running it into my audio interface through a audio cable, so research how to connect that up, and I will leave a link down below for those different sort of setups. But once that's sorted, I would recommend checking out the dynamic tutorial if you've just got your SEQTRAK, because that's going to allow you to interact with the SEQTRAK and see all the tutorial on how to do the buttons and how they work. But today we are focusing on the visualizer. So if you've never done any sort of visualization before, what we're doing is we're taking the input, so whether that's the sound or the actual button presses, and we're applying it to visuals, so animations, changing material colors and doing all that sort of stuff. So we're showing that reaction between the SEQTRAK and the sound and how it's applied to the visuals. So it is a bit labor intensive, so if you got a lesser powered laptop or a old phone, you might run into issues. So this is just a warning, just telling us not to have a low spec machine, but I will point out ways that we can save on memory and make our visuals run a little bit better if we have those low specs machines. And we do have a variety of different starting options, so you can select one of these and start playing with your SEQTRAK to see how it's all working. But I'm just going to start a new one, and I'll just remove my face because we have our full interface here, so we can see how everything's working. We've got all our synths and samplers and all that good stuff, but really understand when we hit play on the SEQTRAK, we can see how all the things are coming in. And that's how we drive our animation. But I think the first thing we need to understand is how to move around our scene, because we're going to be moving objects, moving the scene, and it'll just make it so much easier. But we do have this nice little graphic down here, so if we hold Alt, we can change the view angle. If we go Windows Alt, we can pan around or scroll, as they say, and Control and Alt allows us to zoom in and out. So they'll be different on each device, so just reference that to make sure that we're all good. So enough about how to navigate. How do we actually make our visuals? And this is where we can click one of these icons, and I think we can do something with the kick, and we'll select that. And as you can see, we've got a variety of different objects that we can use. You can view them all like that. But with anything 3D, you always got to start with the default cube. So I'm going to select that. And as you can see, there is a lot of stuff that's going on in this space. So I just want to talk a little bit about 3D terminology, because understanding how it all works together but separate allows us to understand how we can use that kick to start manipulating our objects. So first off, we have the object, so mesh, all that good stuff that makes our cube shaped. That's all in this bar here. Material, so this is the surface of the object, so this is how it's going to look. And we've got a variety of different materials that we can work on. So I'm just going to leave it there, but I might just turn it off because it's a little bit distracting for me. Deformation, so this is thinking that we can change the shape of this, like Play-Doh, we can move it around. It's not really the fixed shape, but with digital or geometry, it's probably got more mesh that we don't see because it's a flat surface. And we'll talk a little bit moving on, because that is a really cool effect to play with. Motion, this is sort of like the animation from our sound. So we got two of those, and appearance. So this will turn on and off depending if it can hear the sound or see the input. So they're just more superficial, higher level concepts of how we can control our thing. But understanding that different materials, meshes, like we've got particle effects, we've got text assets, and they're all got their own ways to interact. So I'll highlight those later. But right now, just understand that each of these have like little internal things that we can control and manipulate. So with our shape, we've got our size, so this will change its scale. We can change its squash and stretch. We can change its depth. But we can also start animating things, but we also can change its density. So this is sort of relating to that deformation. So I'm just going to leave it at a high amount so you can see what's going on. Let's turn one of them on. We got all these sort of deformation models that we can control. Let's pick this wavy one, and ooh, that looks interesting. But if I was to just change the scale of it, so it's not so, we make our cube wiggle a little bit. Yeah, that looks kind of cool. We come back into object and I just start scrolling down this deformation, and as you can see, it will start turning into a very low poly object because we're removing the geometry from the asset. So just understand that if your computer is probably lagging a little bit, just giving it a little bit less geometry, so somewhere there where you still get the visual of what's going on, but it's going to run a lot smoother. So going back into deformation, we've got a few different areas, but then we have these boxes here where we can actually have it being very static or very controlled, but then we can apply reaction. So if I just hit play now, you'll see it bouncing around and creating some really cool animations from the sound. So if I leave that static and say we can make it bounce a little bit harder, let's go and play that animation, but it's probably like popping a little bit too quick for me. So we can come down to the envelope and control that. So I can drag that out a bit. So now it's bouncing around to the music and looking really interesting. And really, you'll find these throughout the objects themselves. So you've got to click around and see that. And as you saw, the animation scrolls, like if I come back up here and just leave it scrolling, we can change how much it wiggles. So it can be really fast, it can be really slow, or we can have it react when it plays. So if I hit play now, it's shifting along as it's bouncing around. So you can apply these like a synthesizer, like how we do our sound and start manipulating that. We can apply that to our visuals through these blocks here. And that's just related to geometry. Like we can apply that to our surface as well. Like as you saw before, we could have like our animation scrolling. We can change the speed, but we can also have that speed react to the sound. So if I play again, we can see how the mesh is moving around. Maybe it requires a little number because it's probably having to move quite a lot. And we do have a variety of different materials that we can control as well. So don't feel that you are limited. What I might do is just make this a flat color. And as you saw, it doesn't have as many different control points like it did with that checker point. So you just got to go into each one and sort of explore. But with the wiggle, like, I think that's kind of cool. But let's have a look at what sort of motion we can add to it. So this is going to animate the object. So we're not animating the mesh. So like treating it like Play-Doh, this is like picking up and throwing it. So I might just choose this bounce so we can have it bop to the beat. It's probably jumping a little higher because it's in meters. So I'll just get it to just bounce around like that. And same thing again. There we go. And I might add something with the appearance. So this will allow it to turn on and off as we play the music. So as you can see, it will bop when it's on. So you can have it so it's pulsing on and off from the actual animation itself. So I actually like it just like this. So it reacts to the drum kick and it's bouncing around. I think that's really interesting. But if we were just to close it, it's in a bit of a weird spot over here, and I want it to sit behind where the kick drum is. So what we can do is come back into it and we can start adjusting it. So these like little red, green and blue things, they're called gizmos, and we can use it to move it around. So I'm just going to click. This is where it's really important to understand how to navigate a 3D environment. So I can just move that, bring it behind that kick there. Let's see what it looks like when I just run it here. Yeah, so it's bouncing around. Maybe we can make it a little bit more scaled. But I'm very happy seeing how that is all working. So it's dancing with our nice little kick as well. Now if you want to leave this menu, you can click this back button, hit close, and just with those three little areas that I started animating, we created something unique and interesting that reacts to our sound. So You'll see me do this a few different times, but this is just really the understanding on how to get things to react in the SEQTRAK software. So what about other objects? Like we can actually stack a few different objects to have different animations running at the same time. But we can also add it to other areas. So I might add something to the clap because the clap and snare hit together, and I might choose something different. Oh, maybe a particle effect. So if you haven't dealt with particle effects before, these are like snow and sand and like different elements that fly around, but you're probably just limited to these ones here that look particle effect-ish. I might pick this snow one here. So if I just hit close, as you can see, our SEQTRAK is in a nice winter landscape now. But we can adjust that by changing the point size. So these is how big are those little dots. We can make them really big or really small. This is like the scale of our particle effect, so how wide it is. But we sort of have another one which is density, which adds more points. So you got to finesse this. And if you had a lesser spec machine, this might be a bit expensive. So being able to have not as many points might be useful for you. So we can blur them as well if they're getting a little bit too far in the background. Same thing, we've got material, we can just change the color of it. So say if I want them to be a reddish hue or something, come in here and change the color. Deformation, so same thing, but we're adjusting how it reacts to the pulse of the clap. So if I was to just run it now, it's jumping a little bit because of how it's sort of reacting, but say I want it to run really slow, sort of like dust in the air, but every time that clap comes through, it knocks it big time. Yeah, something like that. And if I come back again, yeah, it's animating the way I want. And don't feel that you can only do this to drums, we can do that to a synth as well. And like I've got a synth on this one, that's sort of the main bass line, so we can pick some of these more interesting objects as well. So ooh, something like that might be interesting. I'll just make sure I can see it. Sort of like this diamond shape. Maybe it's got some other stuff that we can play with. We can change the size of the cues, we can change how they react. What else? Maybe we have it rotating in our scene as well, so it's just sitting there, and then we can have it do something on that synth sound. So yeah, it's doing a little bit of animation. Maybe we make it a little bit more intensely react to the synth sound. Yeah, and then we can control its envelope, and this envelope you can see how we've got like a little bit more control how it's coming in and out. So we might have it so it wiggles a little bit more when it's sloping in, and impedance, so we can have it same thing, we can turn it on and off. And another object I want to highlight because it does add a little bit extra is, I'm just going to use synth 2 because nothing's happening here, it's not going to react, but picking one of these text objects here, we can actually control like text. And what I might do is I can put my nice little HJam sort of banner in the background. It's animating, we can probably change the material. I'm probably just going to make it a solid red, so I can come in here, do that. We can change up the font as well, so might do something like that, big chunky boy, and let's just move it behind everything. So just bring it back a little bit, bring it across, we can scale it up again. So you'll find you'll be in this process of just like building objects and placing them in the scene. But these are like the major sort of things that we can interact. We have our 3D objects, we have text, we have these complex objects, and we have particle effects as well. And how you set them up or how many you layer onto one object is going to build out your environment to show you how everything's going to react together. So it's really cool that way. Now you're probably at this video thinking, oh, there's some basic objects. Is there anything else that we can control? And this is where that other objects category is. So this has other stuff that's really interesting to add to our scene. So what I might do, there is a really cool bar graph down here, and it sort of demonstrates how this other objects category works, because it's not just, oh, here's the object, we can place it in the scene. It actually reacts to a variety of different areas of our synth. So if I was to just play our sequence now, we can actually see how the bar graphs are interacting. So it might be a little quick, so I can just slip it around a bit, but we can have a look how that's in the scene as well. So might bring it into the background, and we can scale up massively, so it's like a big chunky thing in the background. So these are other objects, but it just shows more of what's going on with the SEQTRAK and how everything is working. And there is a variety of objects that we can control through these like multiple areas. So another one I really like is this smiley face thing. We'll get it positioned first and talk a bit about, because it's got a few different areas where we can animate. We can make it sort of flash, but we can also change how it acts in the scene. So I'm just probably going to move it over here, just something on a bit of an angle, and we'll go back into the view, because we do have two different areas that we can control. So we control the face animation as well as the Fresnel. So Fresnel is a flash, and then see how the face is changing. But we don't have to rely on one area. So maybe we want it to flash with the hats, and then we can have it trigger on this perk one, because that's my like sort of interesting sort of synth cowbell, and then it's animating but in different patterns. So we got two objects showing different patterns going on. I do like adding those types of animations when I'm doing this in other software. So it just gives other ways we can animate as well. But these are kind of expensive, so you can't duplicate on the same thing and add more. You're limited to 3, so have a play, have a look around at all the different objects and see how you can use them. So we've got a whole bunch of objects together, but how can we change them up even more? And this is where post effects come in. And these are like surface level video effects. So if you've seen like a VJ, they start changing the colors, or they change the pattern, or they make the background glitch out quite far. These are the video effects that we got access to. And really go experiment with these, because they each have their own way to change the sound. But I do like this glitch effect up here. But we do have access to more of the synths, so we're not just limited to the drums and the synths. We've also got the slider, and I think that glitch effect works really well with the repeater. So if I just close that and jump out so you can see it a little bit easier on the screen. But if I just slide my finger up on the repeater, we've got that finesse control, so we can say when a little repeater happens or a big one. If we've got the music playing, we can sort of visualize how we're live playing with the device as well. And I think the SEQTRAK, like I haven't really talked about, but really that live play effect on these little loops make it such a fantastic little machine, and being able to visualize it that way, so we can actually show our audience what's sort of going on. So like, let's see what this retrograde done, and we can put it on the first one. So if I jump all the way back out again, we're not just limited to one, we can have two controls going on at the same time to augment what's going on. And then usually we can place it around as well, so maybe you want a distortion effect when a kick drum happens, or have like blur kicking when like we start adding reverb or delay, but just adds to the performance that we have. And we're on to our last setting, which is scene setting. So like, as first we were able to navigate the scene, but this is how we can change the scene and change the way it looks. So we've got our lighting, we've got reflections, we've got background, we've got floor, and we've got shadow. So if you're running into performance issues, you can turn the shadow off, and as you saw, all these sort of shadows disappear. That's a nice way to do it, or they might be affecting your animation, you just don't like the look of it. We can change the floor. As you can see, some of the objects are poking through, so we can turn the floor on and off if we want. We can change the color of the floor if we want, but I'm just going to turn it off for what I'm working on, because I do like that background. It's not really cutting through. And talk about background, because it's nice flat black, let's change it up as well. So we can change it to a single color, so we can change the hue. We can actually have multiple colors, so if we pick one of these and just let it run, it actually beat syncs with our device. So this is flashing in the background just to keep with the tempo. We can add a photo, so we can actually pull in photos off our device and have it show on the background, some tiling options and stuff like that. We can have a video background, so if you pre-recorded something or you've done some visualizations in Blender and wanted to bring them across, you can do that here. And then the live camera feed, which might throw my computer into a bit of a fritz, hopefully not. But yeah, you can take the webcam feed and have that in the background. So if you wanted to, you could turn off the synth and have all the objects around and do like a pseudo AR setup, which we're going to touch on a little bit more with the phone. But that's just another way you can use this device. So what I might do is leave it on that multiple color, because I do like those backgrounds. Reflections. So if you ever like gone outside or gone inside, and just how a look of an object will absorb light. So it might get reddish hues if it's close to something. Like right now I've got some colored lights and they're changing up the white wall. This is how we change the color of our object. So we've got outsides, we've got some insides, we've got dark night. I like just leaving on this blue one because it's like a default. It gives it a nice touch, but you can see how it's reflecting and lighting. So we've got a basic point light in the sea. We can have some strobing lights, so they'll pulse with how we want. We've got fade in out, we've got a dimmer one. But yeah, all these sort of react to different elements in our scene. Alright, so I've done a bit of work. I went away and just had a bit of a play placing the objects around just in a nicer position than me recording a tutorial to show how everything works. But yeah, I've got something nice. I've got my little song ready to go and I want to record something. How I do that is by clicking this button up here and it goes into this camera view / record. So what this is doing is it's just got these camera motion paths that you can choose from. So experiment, have a play to see how they all work, but I'm just going to leave it on this one. And as you can see, things are animating, things are moving. If you leave it alone for a little bit, it'll go away. So the way I'm recording this tutorial right now, so I'm just using Streamlabs, you can record it off the desktop like that, or you can click the button here and that's going to start recording the video internally. So there's a few different things that you need to consider, like if I turn off my head for a sec, like you do have like FPS up here, so if you're noticing that dropping below, well 29 is usually pretty good, but if it starts getting choppy you'll be able to see it up here. You can change the camera angle, so zoom in, so it's more like a standard lens, a mid-range lens and a wide angle lens. I usually like leaving on normal and that gives us a whole bunch of stuff to work with. So if I was to just start live playing this, like I could start playing and we can add some effects, start cutting things out, bring it all back in again, and we start getting our little groove on. So it just gives us a variety of ways that we can interact with the sound and visualize it. So if we wanted to put this online and show other people, or just jam with it, like really is one of those fun things to do. But I think the next thing is, let's have a look at how it works on the phone, because we do get some of that augmented reality goodness. So I've just taken a step back from the computer and you're probably seeing how many layers are going on right now, but let's have a look at our phone and go into device connection, because if you hit the all and the swing key, that's how you set up Bluetooth and that's how you get it connected, so we can get all those good inputs across. So let's jump straight into the visualizer. We'll go into horizontal mode and we're going to apply AR mode. So augmented reality is when we're visualizing our environment, so sort of like how I'm doing now with the headset, but we're going to do that through our phone. So I'm just going to close that and we'll just pick something random. One thing I will say, I haven't figured out a way to get the computer one onto the phone one, so if you're going to work on your phone, do it all from there, but we're going to hit AR mode down there. So you got a few parameters here. I'm just going to close that, but what we need to do is we go use the phone to get our space. So there we go, it's figured out where the table is and now we've got our C track. So what we need to do is move the C track across and onto our object. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a spin and then we bring it back down onto the table. Try and get as close as possible because it's just going to make it sync up a little bit better. The scale a little big, so I'm just going to move around till it lines up. I do like this wireframe to help line it up, and I think this is really handy for when I do my sort of visualizations on other things, but right now I'm just going to confirm that, and as you can see, all that visualization stuff has come across. So we've got like a name going on, we can go around with the film, we can animate all this, and maybe if you have your own person, like you're running solo, you can have like a little stand, connect it up, sit on the table and film, and then you can play over here. But then if you're doing your own stuff or you have a friend that can hold the phone for you, you can be playing on the C track and then they can be coming around doing all those super trendy cool animations, like check out this dude dancing. Like that is super cool that you can bring AR, sync it up with a device like that, have it running, and things are animating on here. So I hope that's given you a little bit of inspiration. If you got a C-Track, to go try that visualizer, because there is a lot under the hood. Having a poke at the files, I figured out it's made in Unity, so there's a lot of capacity to really expand out what's going there. One thing I didn't see was being able to import your own models to be able to animate, but I can definitely see extra models being added over time to really flesh out that environment. But just being able to see a device have an internal capacity to be able to use the sounds, use the inputs to drive animations like I do with my visuals, it's a big step that I really want to see in sort of that synth community and with synthesizers in general. And really, like, I only showed this as my first video, and I do want to talk about more. Like, it looks pretty simple on the surface, but there is a lot going on under the hood, so I do want to talk about that in the future. But really, no one's talked about the visualizer, and it's sort of my area and sort of my special interest, so I really wanted to highlight it today and give it a nice bit of shine. So if you did enjoy this one, definitely give it a thumbs up. It does tell the algorithm to point this to other people that are probably looking to make some really interesting content and using visualization as a way to promote their video production as well as their music. If you do have any comments or queries, please feel free to leave them down below. I do go down there and try and answer as many questions as possible, and like being someone that is very music focused, moving into 3D, it might be a bit scary, but really I do ask questions about, like I do have a second channel that's dedicated to Blender and 3D, so I do have a bit of a 3D background to answer anything that you got, and it'll become a body of knowledge for other people that are looking at this. So in the end, I do hope you enjoy it, and if you're looking for other music related content, I do have a catalogue of synthesizer based tutorials, and I'm hoping to get more Yamaha SEQTRAK stuff out there. So if you're interested in that, I look forward to seeing you next time.